This is Meghan Lawson, and this is the Innovators Mindset podcast. Play that music.
There you go. A little cue. It is actually really funny. I do like I had a little moment of like remembering you first coming on, and you're way more comfortable now. You're dancing.
Yeah.
You're owning the space. I love it. So you're
Hey,
the
yeah.
host. It's
Can
you're
we
the
get
host
can we
today.
get some sound effects?
You can't just because of that. There you go. I haven't hit that one in a while. I do. I
That's
do
good.
have a. I don't know if you ever watched the show. I think you should leave. But I have sound
No,
effects from that. Yeah, that's like
that's
probably
good.
my favorite Netflix show. But that's not why we're here for
It's
the sound
not.
effects, right? So I'll let you run the show.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to talk to you today about your book.
Well,
Forward
hey,
together.
I know it's your podcast and you got some questions for me, and I've done this with other people. I will. I'm going to tell everyone. I'm going to ask you. I got one question for you.
Okay.
And I didn't give you the heads up on it, but I do
Nope.
want to say one of the things that really people don't notice, and I did put it in the acknowledgments. When I was writing the book, I connected with you like every day and like set you what I was writing, get you, was like waiting for your feedback. And you know, you kind of went through the messy part of it too, because you're like, what do you like? What's this going on? Like, what's happening here too? So I really appreciate all the help you had, and like it would have never turned out. I'm not usually like this. I am so amazingly proud of this book. I think it is really, really good, and I don't think it would have ever been that if it wasn't for your support and feedback, and really kind of knowing what's happening in schools and making sure I was on the right track. So I just want everyone to know how influential you were in putting this book together. So it would
Well,
have never. I think it turned out amazing, but
it did. I'm
It would
excited to
not
talk
have.
about it.
It would not have happened if it wasn't for you. And you know me. That's not. I don't like saying that stuff. So, but this one I do. I'm very proud of. So I'm very excited about it. Going now.
Wow.
One question for you. Going through this, and I do want to just. I was at your district, so let's give a little shout out, Sycamore. So a really incredible group, and connected with your Adrian, who I think is the board chair. I don't know if she's the chair, but I know.
She's a member of our board of
Yeah,
education.
she's a
Yeah.
member of the board. Just really, and I actually remember. I think is it Isla? Ayla?
Isla. Yeah.
Isla. Yeah, she did a wonderful job opening the day. One of the things I really remember about that day was I could not tell who her mom was because there was two women sitting there and one was so proud, or they were both so proud, and just like watching her. And what was really cool, I remember this very distinctly. One was her mom and one was her kindergarten teacher, and it was like the cool, and I couldn't tell who was who. So it was like I just remember that. It was like so cool to see how the community came to like. It really reminds me of a lot of stuff I talk in the book, to see how invested they were, and I couldn't tell who's the mom, who's the teacher, but they were so proud of her, and that was just really cool. So I will. The only question I have for you is what was like your big takeaway? Like what stuck out to you in the book, and specifically maybe in your role, it's like more working at a central office, being. Is your title deputy superintendent? Is that a Canadian thing, or is it assistant superintendent? What is your title?
Oh, that sounds really cool. I am an assistant superintendent.
Deputy, right? You have a little star on
Yeah,
there.
it sounds like the sheriff's in town. It does.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what stuck out to you when you read the book? And like,
Well,
and it's like weird because you read it in the messiest version and then you read it in the cleanest version. So maybe even in either part of that phase when I was writing it, or when it was actually finished.
there's so many things that I want to say because this is by far, and I have loved and learned from every one of your books, but this has been by far my favorite book. And I think it's a book that we all need right now. I think we are all looking for ways to create a path forward together. I mean, I think that's even why the covers is so thoughtful. The title is because that really is what this book is about. But I think what my biggest takeaway is, and I think this takeaway comes from hearing you speak, or reading the book itself, and that is the profound sense of honesty and humanity that you bring to hard things while also making it accessible and practical and enjoyable, figuring out how to do the hard thing together. Like that's true about this book.
Yeah. You know
And
that I think that for me is something when I feel someone's talking over me, I disconnect, right? And I kind of pride myself on not using jargon.
yes,
Right? And I don't even know what maybe I'm using the word jargon as jargon. I don't know.
I don't know.
Right?
That's a really meta moment we're having. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. But it is like, you want everyone to see themselves in the book in some way. And I feel one of the best compliments I got on it was that it was conversational. I actually think it might have been you, not condescending. Because, sometimes when people write books, you feel like they're the expert, they know more than you, stuff
Hmm.
like that. Whereas I'm like, kind of displaying some of my downs and my ups through that process and kind of figuring out
Well,
how to get through there.
and I want to ask you about that a little bit. So the first principle about, pointing to ourselves first, point to
Yeah.
yourself first. I really appreciate how honest, vulnerable, relatable, and funny, almost self-deprecating at times you are in this book. But it takes a level of confidence
Mm-hmm.
to be that way with others. And I think you've always had that tendency, but I feel there's a maturity to this writing in this book that I think we can all learn from. So I guess my first question for you, it's a little deep. I probably should have thrown you a
Mm.
softball first. Is when you think about innovator's mindset and
Yep.
then your work up to this book in this now moment, what changed for you, and how was that reflected in your writing?
Um, like this, for whatever reason, this one, like Innovator's Mindset, I wrote that, and it's weird because I write everything quickly. Once I get the idea, and anyone who ever wants to write a book, my biggest suggestion in this: don't write a book because you want to write a book. Write a book when you really feel you have to say something, and that's like this book did not exist, and then it just hit me, and I was like I have to get this out. And Innovator's Mindset was that, and I think when I wrote Innovator's Mindset is like, here's a vision of what education can be. And even though I, share some insights there and talk about some of my beliefs in what education can be, I always do try to say like, hey, you have to kind of figure this stuff out on your own, because my vision is, connected to my experience, and I don't have the experience being in your school, being in your classrooms. So you have to figure that out as well. And I think that when I wrote Forward Together, it was really not about my vision. It was about whatever your vision is. And I talk about like, hey, I'm not here to have debates about certain ideas in education. That's not the point of the book. It's it's not about you agreeing with me. It's what happens when people disagree. And how do you deal with that? And how do you get people to connect and really have true ownership over that process? So I think there's a lot more comfort in this one showing my mistakes in the process, even after the innovator's mindset, even after writing it. And you kind of mentioned there's a confidence in it, but there's also a little bit of an insecurity in the sense that I don't like people pointing out my mistakes when I can see them first. So I'd rather just do it. So I'd rather just own it. And it's just way easier to deal with because, I know you have a connection to basketball. And I didn't share this story, and I thought about sharing it in the book. There was a time when I was reffing at college level, and I'll never forget this. And it's my first time reffing college level, and there's three officials, which is not normal. It's typically two, but higher level, you need another person in there. I had no calls in the first quarter of the game, and I actually I made a call in the second quarter. It was such a bad call. It was a foul. I just made it. I'm like, oh, this is terrible. The coach immediately started yelling at me. He's like, ref. And I was like, Coach, I'll talk to you at the first stoppage play. So he called a timeout to basically yell at me. So I go to my partners and they're like, do not go over that because they knew I screwed up too. So I went over to the coach and I immediately said to him, coach, listen, there's nothing to discuss here. That was a terrible call by me. I'll do better. And he just like smiled and he's like, what are you going to say? And I think that's part of it, is going through some of those experiences, knowing when you just can kind of own it, then you kind of take power away from other people, and it just makes it easier to move forward. But, and I'm sure you know this too, not that I'm not saying you make a bunch of mistakes. People connect with you, especially in an administrative position when you're like, hey, I messed this up and here's how I'm going to fix it. If you do everything right, they start to disconnect in a weird way, right? It's like, oh, you just get everything right, right? You know, and that, I think that's something I really learned, is because they appreciate that you're willing to admit when you make mistakes, but it just shows an openness to learn, to grow. And that's what you're always asking of people. So like when you show it, they're more likely to do it as well. So I think that was easier for me to do because, you know, I had great leaders who basically said like, hey, if you have a concern that something's going to hit our phone, tell us first. So
Yes.
we have a heads up. And if
Yes.
it doesn't come to us, great. But if it does, at least we're prepared. So like I really learned, you know, in my career from some really amazing mentors, like it's easier to own it, and then you kind of have control over where it goes. And I think I was just way more comfortable sharing some of those mistakes where, you know, Innovator's Mindset, first book, you want it to be as perfect as possible, and, you know, show everything you maybe did right, even though I know I do talk about some of the things I messed up in that book. But I think this is a little bit more comfort with that, because it's like, even there's a part where I say, why would you listen to me? And I'm like, well, you know, I'm a person making mistakes, and maybe you will see some of those things, because you want people to kind of, you don't want people looking at me, you want them looking at themselves, and you want them to see themselves in that book. And that, you know, kind of going back to, that's accessibility of it, I hope, is that people feel
Well, and
like
I
you
find
can.
both books are so accessible and very
Yeah,
conversational. I just think because of the topic of this
yeah,
particular book, you know, if you're talking about principle one, pointing at yourself first, you allowed yourself to point at yourself first
totally.
for us with the first principle, which makes us then more likely to be like, okay, yeah, like I'm going to be more inclined to share with others. And I think it's helping me reframe some things, because instead of looking at every situation like, why isn't it happening this way? Why am I not seeing more vulnerability or curiosity or what have you? It's like, okay, well, what am I bringing into those spaces to model for principals, for assistant principals, for teachers, to show that we're all learning and we're all growing. And there's like this fine line, right? Because I don't want to look like I also like have what's going on around here. I don't know what to do. So
I know, like you know the book very well. When I've talked to people about it, I don't know if you know this, I've said, hey, I got this book coming out, I'm really excited about it. I actually open it with this story, and I start to tell them the story, you know, because we're trying to get people to move forward together, so they know what the book is about. And as they're listening to me, they're like, that's a terrible way to do it. Like, that's a terrible way to do it. And then I'd say, and then I acknowledge how it was a terrible way, and I was pushing away the people I wanted to pull together. And like, oh, because they're not, you like, they might hear bad advice, but they don't hear someone say, here's the stupid thing I did to open a book, right? And it was like interesting, because you might, as you're reading it, you might think, does this guy actually think this will help? And then you realize, no, I realize it didn't. That's why I'm sharing it with you, because there are things that I'm sure you've done, I know I've done, that is like, there's a way better approach than what I took, right? And that's what we ask of people we serve, is that they are reflective and look back to, like, my whole thing is the best way to move forward is to look back and learn from those mistakes. There's power in that.
I think so too, and which it does lead me to my next question. And I think there's a connection between these two questions, and that is in thinking about that first principle and going first and being willing to.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'm afraid to share ideas in spaces because I'm worried people are going to judge
Mm-hmm.
my idea. So I've actually started trying to reframe it as, this is probably a terrible idea. So I'm going to say
Right.
my terrible idea out loud, and then I'll let you
Right.
like come up with a better one, right?
Right.
Um, that connects me to this next principle. I think it's principle three, that's about building community
Mm-hmm.
and how you invite others to challenge.
Yeah.
And I think why it was so rewarding for me to read about this is, one, I think that's hard for a lot of people, but it's a piece that's missing. And we wonder why people end up in the parking lot, which you reference in your book that, instead
Yeah.
of going to the parking lot, like I'd rather just talk about it here. But I think what was uh, so pertinent for me is I've actually seen you do this in person with large crowds of people and very comfortably. And I just want to know more about like where does like how did you learn to practice that, or where does that come from for you?
Yeah, I think it's some emails that I might have received where someone said, "Hey, I didn't like that you said this." And I was like, "Yeah, they're totally right. Like I could have done that way better." And it kind of sucks when you can't do anything about it anymore. Do you know what I mean? So like I spoke at this place or I left this place and now I get this feedback after the fact on something they disagreed with and they share it. And it's like that feedback would have been so beneficial where I could have done something or listened to it. And I think it's just the comfort. And I think maybe this is the maturity is that I know I don't know everything. I know I have a lot to learn. And, my whole presence on social media has never been to like tout my ideas. It is to share my learning over time. Here's things that went wrong. I get really turned off by anyone on social media says, you need to do this. I'm like, no, no, no. I'm not doing it. I'm actually not doing it now because you said I have to do it. Like it pushes me away. What I'm drawn to is, hey, here's something I tried, or here's something I'm learning, and just sharing it and being comfortable with that. And it kind of you see a lot of people like I don't want to go on social media or I don't want to post anything because I don't want to see bragging. I'm like, well, just share your learning. Just share what you're learning. Don't say it's the best idea. Just share. Here's something I'm doing. Right. I don't know if I'd say I have a terrible idea. And that maybe I would, right? And I think you just have to be comfortable with that. But the challenge is I think what I learned from it is I'm seeking growth. I want to get better. And when you're inviting that in, again, it's easier to deal with than hearing it after the fact. Or sometimes you don't give people the opportunity. And let's be honest, it's way easier to be mean in an email than in front of everybody. So not that it doesn't happen. I shared an instance where someone was really mean to me in
Mhm.
front of everybody in the book, but it's when you're talking face to face and you have that human connection and you say like, hey, and I think people appreciate that. Like it's always funny because you don't necessarily see what I see because I'm looking at everybody when I say it, and they're like, really, like you really, because they're not. And you can tell people are not used to it. They're not used to saying pushback on the idea because I'm still trying to figure stuff out too. And maybe I'm right, but maybe I'm not right here because of whatever context. Maybe I don't know something that you know. And if you can give me some more information, maybe I can alter what I've said to better serve you. And so I think that's having that humility of that is totally fine. And again, that comes back to being confident in the sense that I'm very proud of all the work that I've done, but I know I can get better. So, and both of those things, that to me is confidence, right? Is right there. Is that you can still grow, but you should be proud of where you've come from as well.
I love that. I think that's something that I'm really striving for in my current role is the ability to kind of hold space for some paradox, right? Like these two things can be true at the same time. We can have things that we're really proud of, and we can work on getting better. And like both of those things can coexist. And I think you talk a lot about building community is also building up community.
Yep.
You talk about that in that same principle in the concept of warm bath, cold shower. And I was wondering if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's and this is like I know you've seen me speak so many times. You people do not feel appreciated, right? And you want to make sure that whenever you enter, especially a new space or when you're around people, that they do feel appreciated. But there is times you go overboard. Like, don't ever change. You're the best the way you are. And imagine a kid coming into a classroom and saying like, hey, you don't have to learn math. You're perfect just the way you are. Like we push kids all the time to grow. And it doesn't mean we don't love them, we don't care about them, but it's actually the opposite. We want them to grow because we do care about them, right? We want them to do better. We have high expectations for them. So when you go in there, the warm bath, people need to know that they're appreciated, but also you have to be able to push them a little bit. So that to me, when people ask me, like, when you go speak, what's your goal? I said, well, I want to make sure people feel appreciated. But I also want people to be challenged by some of the stuff I say, but I also want them to walk out there going, I can totally do this. Like, I can totally do this. So they have the confidence that, I can get better too. And so that is what we're supposed to do in education. So when you're just like, you're the best, don't ever change, that doesn't resonate with me. And then I've seen the cold shower, like, you suck, everything's wrong, blah, blah, blah. And then people are like, well, what can we do? So you got to kind of find that balance, because that balance, that warm bath, cold shower, is what leads to growth. That actually is what leads to development. That is the goal of teachers in classrooms, should be the goal of us, is like, how do we, like, if you really think about leadership in and not administration, leadership, because those aren't necessarily the same thing. The goal is that the people you serve should be better because of your presence, right? Not just, we let the red flag comment when I say, how is your principal? They let me do whatever I want. That's a red flag for me. It's like, well, you're not getting better because of that. And it's not that they shouldn't trust you, shouldn't have autonomy, but do they make you better? And if it's just, I do whatever I want, they're not helping you in that journey at all. And I've left places because I felt I'm never going to grow here, right? And a lot of people feel that in education, that all the attention goes to the complainers and not to people who desperately want to get better. And just because that's how they're wired, right? And so people who fight you on getting better, that's where we pay attention. People who want to get better, we just let them do whatever and punish them sometimes by giving them more work.
Mm. Well, there's one more. I snuck a double question on the second one, so I have one more question, and I'm
Okay.
allowed because I'm in charge
Yeah,
today.
you are. You're the host.
So, principle 6 is about create a vision together.
Yeah.
And I want to read a few quotes from you because I think they're all important for people to hear. And I really hope people read this book because I think it has the power to truly transform communities. But I'm going to read these quotes and then you get to just respond about anything
Sure.
that's on the top of your mind based on hearing them. Okay. So, the first one is that people are less likely to tear down a culture that they were a part of building.
Yep.
So true. If you build it, they will come, but who will stay? You're pausing as if that one doesn't exist in the book. I pulled it from your book.
Yeah, it
And
does.
the
I
last
remember it.
one, the
Yeah.
last one actually comes from the last part of the book, moving forward, that every school
Yep.
is a community school.
Yep. Well, okay. So that was an interesting. That last one was like, I was perplexed, and maybe it's because, growing up in Canada, working in Canadian schools, I don't know. I don't even know if community, like. So now I got very thoughtful about this, because I don't want someone who's listening to this, like, we're a community school and like there's a designation for that. To me, every school is a community school. Like, everything is about the community. And so when I was asked that question, they're like, have you ever worked in a community school? I'm like, have I ever not? Like, isn't every school that? So like, and that was my own maybe ignorance to some of the US terminology of schools. But
But it
when,
shows you the power of a good question
yeah,
because you go on to say like thinking about schools not just about serving communities but as community, and I
right.
think that
Well,
reframing is really important in our work. Yeah.
totally. And that, so when you think about this, you see me and I'll say like, hey, I've taught, as an administrator at the school level, I was a administrator at the district level, and I do it just, like, people think it's just kind of like whatever, but what I'm doing is everyone like, oh, he taught, oh, he's been an administrator, oh, he worked at central office. So they see that, because people tend to listen to people who have done their jobs, right? And do you know who else listens to other people? Parents listen to parents, right? And so when you bring people in and you authentically listen to them and you ask for feedback, and then, and this is, I've always had this issue when you have like student leadership summits, and we're like, what do you think schools should be? And then we like say we listen to their voice, but then you do nothing. And
Mhm.
that to me is like, well, why even bring them in? Like, if you're not going to do anything because of it, and maybe you don't do something about it, but you can say, hey, we heard you. We know you want this, but we can't have 6-hour lunches. Like, that's not going to happen. So like, and here's why. So even like saying, here's why we can't do the thing that you said is better than just moving on from the conversation. And so what happens really interesting is that you're seeing like in a lot of school communities right now, there's a lot of conflict between families and the schools. And the thing is, when you bring families in and then they actually see their fingerprints on the vision you create, and you're doing that, they are not your adversaries all of a sudden, they are your allies. And then they become the best voices for your community because they don't want to hear other parents complaining about what the school is doing, because I actually helped make that. And so that, like, I used to, it's interesting because sometimes I bring this up and people are like, wow, I would never do that. I'm like, why wouldn't you do that? Is like, we brought parents in to, I have never been an administrator. Not one time did we have a professional learning day that did not include parents of kids in those days, because I wanted them to see what we were talking about, and then I would ask them for their input after. And so many times they said, I wish I had this when I was in school. And then they go and tell everybody. They go tell the families. They go tell their families, and they become your allies. They become the biggest voice for community because their fingerprints are all over that. Like, I would always have these conversations with, our board members and say, like, give me some feedback on this. And then they share. I'm like, okay, awesome. Can you give me a week? And then I come back and say, hey, based on your input, here's some things that I've adjusted. And they're like, I love it. Of course they love it. It's their idea. Right. And it wasn't fake. And there were sometimes like, no, we can't do that. Like, that's not going to happen here. And here's the reasons why. But just inviting them in, that's what we want that to, who is championing schools? It shouldn't be just schools. It should be the families that are being served by it. There's a really, did you see that kid with the Whitney Houston challenge where the whole school?
Yes, love it. Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things that's really cool, because I like read the entire internet every day. Like, my dad used to read the paper. I do that with the internet. So not only did I see the video, I go through all the comments. And one of the coolest comments was the mom said, you have no idea the impact that this entire community has on my child. And it was like,
Aw.
so powerful to see that, because it wasn't just like this cool moment for the kid. It was a cool moment for the family, who like that, you always talk about, kids have those experiences. That mom will never forget that experience for that kid. And she is the biggest advocate for that school community now.
Mm. I get chills hearing that comment. I don't want to lose a strategy that you shared
Sure.
about sharing back with people how they impacted a change or a revision to the work.
Mhm.
I think so often we gather feedback, and sometimes it does impact the work that I'm doing in district office. But if I don't name for them, because it might
Right.
not be in the exact way that they had it in their head, but if I point them to where they were able to shape something, you can't leave anything up to assumption because people are busy, we're distracted, we have a lot going on, and I think that does a lot for culture. So I just appreciate that reminder of that
The
move.
best thing to do, especially when you're trying new stuff, over communicate. Don't ever under communicate. Like, over communicate it. Make sure everyone sees the work and sees where their names are in, what impact they've had. I think that, again, that they become advocates. That's what you're looking for. You want people, like, going back to Isla. Like, I know this seems subtle, but when I don't know if the mom noticed the kindergarten teacher
I'm
smiling.
sure she didn't. They were side by side, so
But
she
but
couldn't
I
see her
I don't know if she
reaction.
did, because both of their eyes were both on Isla. Do you know what I mean? But do you
Yeah.
know what I did? I made sure. I'm like, who are you? Why are you doing this? And and then they connected right after. Like, I remember that very distinctly, because like, I saw something really cool, and whenever you see something amazing, point it out. Do you know what I mean? And like, because like I said, neither of them were looking at each other. They were all just like beaming with pride with Isla, and you could see that both of them connection. But they might have walked away never knowing that about each other. Like, and you definitely want her mom to see how proud the kindergarten teacher was. So that was really, really, that really stuck out to me. I was a great kid too, so
Oh, she is. She's so awesome.
yeah.
I owe her a lunch. Now that you're saying that, I need to bring her a lunch. Um, I just wanted to I get to wrap up however I want, right?
You can do whatever you want. You're
This
the
is
host.
I feel very powerful. I just wanted to wrap up by talking about there's so many people who are questioning, myself included. I think if we're being honest as leaders, every day we're questioning whether or not we should have the job we have, if we're doing a good job. I just appreciate so much the way that you lead, the way that you write in this book, because it truly gives a path forward without being prescriptive and in a way that makes leadership more accessible. I keep using that word, but we don't have to be perfect to make a difference. And we, I just think that more people need to have an opportunity to see themselves as high potential leaders. And so I think that this book will do a lot for a lot of communities, regardless of people's positions. So thank you for writing it.
You know that you know, and I'm guilty of this too. I think when sometimes when you strive for perfection in this role, you lose connection, right? When you are just trying to become better, tap into people, it's going to be super messy, but that's where you make the biggest difference, right? And I think that when you're trying to do everything exactly the way you want it to be, that's when we lose people. And I think that the messiness is where we make some of the most connection. And as I said earlier, people seem to like you a little bit more when you're okay saying like, hey, I messed up, right? Here's the thing I did wrong, and they connect with you, and owning that too. So I think that's what I was hoping to do in this book. But yeah, it's been great. I could not have done it without your support. So, and just like your insights, and that's why I sent it to you. And I was like, hey, don't like just tell me it's good, because I don't want it. Like, I want pushback on this too. So that is how I try to live my life. Because the whole thing about when we write books is like, hey, we want the pushback before the book is released.
Yeah.
After, right? So like we go seeking challenge on that.
Well, you taught me that about blogging too, right? Like it's
Yep.
much lower stakes if I'm just practicing
Yep.
I'm reflecting and I'm practicing talking about what I'm thinking about in front of other people. It's a lot easier to have somebody be critical of a blog post than an entire book.
Yeah, because you can delete a blog post.
Yep.
You delete blog posts.
Yeah,
You can
it's
hide it
good.
later. You can do whatever. What? What blog post? The internet's not forever.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Just
Yeah,
rewrite history.
exactly.
It's not a big deal.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for sharing with me today. I really appreciate it. And I hope more people run out there and buy the book, truly.
Well, I appreciate you, and the whole point of asking people to guest host is hopefully you get to see incredible people like Megan, but also I don't know the questions, so we're hoping that every single time there's something of value, right? Like whatever the question is, what are the perspectives, and so you did a great job, and like I should have expected you were going to write notes. I knew you were going to write notes and quotes. Should have known that. You're going to be super prepped for this. I love it.
Well, listen, I know that you genuinely are a person who wants to add value
Yeah.
to their work and their lives and to model being a learner. And I just want to say, like when I talk about like buying this book, like you didn't say like come on here, like we just were coming on to have a conversation, but I'm telling you, I believe so deeply in it. I hope people get out there and get it. I mean, I want everyone to read it, so I'm not going to be shy about it. And I was in charge today, so there you have it.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks. Thanks, Megatron. My favorite nickname for
Thanks
you.
for having
So,
me.
all right. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.